Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
If, like me, you are feeling quite pessimistic or dismayed at what's happening to our country, I would refer you to Lord Mark Price, who was in this studio a month ago and has written, I think, quite an optimistic explanation of why leaving the customs union isn't necessarily the Armageddon that some people will be portraying it as. It doesn't mean I agree with him. I'm just saying that he seemed, didn't he, like a good egg and a very knowledgeable and thoughtful man. The problem is, and I've only read the bits of his Daily Telegraph article that I don't have to pay for. I should have actually. I've got the print edition in front of me. I should check to see whether it's in there. Never mind the online. Is the Irish question. So I'm torn this morning. I do genuinely think it's time that we started trying to keep everything a little bit more friendly. But I can only be responsible for me. Therefore, it's possibly a slightly futile ambition. The bottom line, it seems to me, is twofold. I don't know enough about commerce and business to conclude definitively that being out of the customs union will be better for British businesses than being in it. I know that most British businesses would rather be in it than out. Their trade body, the Confederation of British Industry, the CBI, has made that pretty clear. But equally, you can name now the fairly prominent British businessmen who were very pro-Brexit. I don't know whether they are pro-leaving the customs union. We should probably put some calls into James Dyson, the bloke that runs JCB, and the fellow with the Wetherspoon pubs, to find out how this impacts on them, the customs union. But it just seems, again, we're going to be moving into the realms of speculation, and anything that's evidence-based, you can just do a Rees-Mogg on it and claim that it's all been fiddled. That was ugly, you know. I know for a lot of people he's still a sort of comedy character, and the sort of borderline fisticuffs that kicked off at that university in Bristol left everybody looking pretty shamefaced, I felt. A lot of very, very curious reporting. I haven't quite got to the bottom of it yet regarding the one man at the centre of it that seemed to be the provocateur. But I thought Rees-Mogg handled himself very well, and I thought some of the protesters were appalling, and the distraction from his attempt to undermine the civil service was no doubt welcome, because I mean, this is real stab in the back rhetoric. You know, post First World War and World War I Germany moved slowly from a sort of sense of national shame at having lost the war to a sense of national blame. It was a very, very specific process. You can track it. The only reason we lost the First World War was because of the Jews, the liberals and the communists. That's why they went into a Second World War and started it off by rounding up the Jews and the communists. So that phrase, that stab in the back phrase, when things go wrong, it's the fault of our enemies. It's not the fault of the people that did it. It's the fault of the people that said don't do it. I thought that Rees-Mogg kind of went in surprisingly heavy on that, especially given that Steve Baker, the minister in the House of Commons, to whom he threw that very deceitful question last week, has apologised fairly unreservedly. And yet, when given the opportunity to do so this weekend, Jacob Rees-Mogg elected instead to really undermine our entire civil service, because he's not getting the numbers he needs to justify his rhetoric. He doesn't need the numbers to justify his rhetoric for his followers, though. They don't need anything, because, and this is the point a lot of us have missed, and I don't think it can be repeated too often. People like me sit here and keep saying, show me what's going to be better. Show me what's going to be better, whether it's economic or commercial or even social. Show me what's going to be better. And that involves missing the point on an industrial scale on the part of myself and people like me, because the other, quotes, side end quotes, don't care. They just want it not to be like it is now. So you can sit here and say, but every indicator is that things will probably be a bit worse, and they'll come back and say, well, look, we're still going to be alive and we won't be in it anymore. So this announcement today about the customs union, it doesn't make sense on any conceivable level, as far as I can tell. And God knows, I wish I hadn't been on a crash course in all of these issues over the last 18 months, but I have, and I can't see an interpretation of no customs union of any kind that doesn't throw Northern Ireland or at least people who believe that Northern Ireland should remain part of the United Kingdom, under a massive, great big bus with 350 million quid written on the side of it. Last time we did this, it was gratifying to realise how many people we had in Northern Ireland listening. It was profoundly worrying to learn how much they agreed with the analysis that this looked like being an insuperable obstacle. It looked like becoming an obstacle we could not overcome. Here's the thing, right? And today's show is for people who want to get stuck into the detail. We'll get back to some good old slanging matches later in the week. But if it is a fundamental prerequisite of the Good Friday Agreement that you have regulatory alignment on both sides of it, and the Republic of Ireland's side will be determined by European Union membership, by single market or EEA or EFTA or any of those things, then I can't see how pulling out of the customs union doesn't leave Northern Ireland blowing in the wind. And I'd really like to, because I think probably in the next few weeks we're going to reach a point where we sort of start agitating for the least bad option rather than still hoping that the whole thing might be called off. I don't know. There seems to be a sort of coalescing of campaigners under Chuka Umunna at the moment that may yet turn out to be an important development. But for me, at least, I'm sick of arguing, and I'm sick of being right. I'm sick of saying, look, here's something written down in black and white that proves you're wrong, and then just having people shout at me. It's just so boring. It really is. And I know I get lots of very, very lovely messages from lots of very, very lovely people thanking me for helping them remove the scales from their eyes. But equally, unless there is another vote, it's not going to matter. It doesn't even matter if the opinion polls hit 70, 80% in favour of remaining or acknowledging that the country's made a terrible mistake. It doesn't matter if there's not going to be another vote. And I can't see this Prime Minister calling it while she's so terrified of her own party's lunatic fringe. So if there's not going to be another vote, what is and I will use a word that is horribly misused in this country at the moment, what is our patriotic duty? Patriotic duty, I think, is to minimise damage done. And if we're minimising damage done, one of the first things we have to look at is, well, very simply, Northern Ireland. So that's all I want to look at. Northern Ireland. Can you conceive of circumstances in which we can somehow not be in the customs union, but can still be in Northern Ireland with regulations and alignments and rules and frameworks that are identical to the Republic of Ireland? Because if the ones in Northern Ireland are identical to the Republic of Ireland, then the rest of the United Kingdom has to be identical to Northern Ireland, which means that the rest of the United Kingdom will be identical to Northern Ireland, which is identical to the Republic of Ireland, which is determined by its customs union and single market membership. You can be in the single market without being in the customs union. Norway has quite an interesting wrinkle on this, but we're tiny compared to Norway. I beg your pardon, Norway is tiny compared to us, and they have freedom of movement. So although they're by being in the EEA but not the CU, you still with me at the back? They can set their own tariffs on trade outside the European Union, but all of the trade that they do with the European Union is obviously determined by European Union rules and regulations. Maybe I shouldn't be worried. 0345 6060973 is the number that you need. This is what I mean by being sick of being right. I really hope that my reading of the Good Friday Agreement and my understanding of what the customs union means is a bit wrong today. Would you mind helping me out? 0345 6060973. Give me a ring, particularly if your understanding of Irish politics is rather better than most of the mainstream British media, which, to be honest with you, wouldn't be hard. Must be very frustrating to live in Northern Ireland and see that we only really pay any attention to you at all when it's too late, or when the terrorism is taking hold. Can you see circumstances in which we've got a border between Ireland and Northern... Well, even if there's a border, the Good Friday Agreement goes. Are people soon going to start claiming we knew all along that we were voting to abandon the Good Friday Agreement? Or am I missing something? Let's get the phone lines open. Hit the numbers now, you will get through. I don't know whether or not you're going to join me on this one, because I don't think it's esoteric or a little bit niche or even pedantic. I think it's the single most important issue facing the country at the moment. But it's so hard to swim alone, you know. Because normally, in the good old days, I'd take my lead from the newspapers. I'd end up doing pretty much the same subjects everybody else did. I'd just possibly sometimes do them from a slightly different angle. And you could take your lead from the news agenda. But I don't think you can anymore. They're so invested in this now. So invested in closing down any space in which people will feel they have the freedom to get better informed and change their minds. Shut up, sneering, condescending. These are the wonderful adjectives now that people who spent most of the last 2 years saying, oh, you can only choose to take offence. You know, all these people who've spent the last 2 years talking about how sensitive snowflakes are. Now you can't even point out to them that the sky is blue without being accused of sneering condescension. It's a very clever tactic, because what it means is, when I say to you the sky is blue, and Chummo over there still arguing that it's bright purple with big yellow polka dots, he says that I'm stop sneering at my friend who thinks the sky is purple with yellow polka dots. Stop being so condescending. And the plan is to close down knowledge-based discussion, because any knowledge-based discussion of a customs union in the context of the Good Friday Agreement would lead to two conclusions. Either Theresa May has absolutely no clue about what she's doing, or she's backing herself to serve up another ladle load of nonsense to the British people, secure in the knowledge that no one will be able to cut through with a proper explanation. And most people now just don't care anymore. Just do it. Customs Union, Northern Ireland, 0345 6060 973. I cautiously suggest to you that today's announcement from 10 Downing Street means, if she understands what the Customs Union and the Good Friday Agreement represent, Theresa May has announced today that post-Brexit United Kingdom will not contain Northern Ireland in anything that remotely resembles its current form. Now, you can tell me that you don't care about that, and the sooner we get rid of them, the better. Overlook generations of bloodshed and sacrifice. But what I'd rather you did was give me a ring now and explain how that's not necessarily true. 0345 6060 973. And if you think I'm exaggerating about what the newspapers are doing and what the mainstream media is doing with regard to these very important measures, the front page of The Sun today has a story about some swans having flu. Northern Ireland is the focus of our attention this morning. If that doesn't necessarily tickle you, then we would probably move on to questions of business opportunities. It seems that if we're denigrating the CBI, I'm not quite sure where we're supposed to turn to find out what British business actually wants. I'd be amazed if that, was it Nissan or Toyota that got a special letter off the Prime Minister when they were worried about Brexit? I can't imagine that they weren't given assurances about customs union membership that appear now to have been broken. These are the weirdest of times. But if we hold hands, we might get through them together. Billy is in Cork. Billy, what's going on?
Good morning, James.
Hello, Billy.
So, from the Irish perspective, I don't see it working having a hard border across the island. I think it's akin to separating Scotland and England with a hard border. It's something that's not going to be policeable.
Well, except that there was one in living memory, wasn't there? So it's not quite...
Within living memory, yes, but that was a completely different situation where you had terrorism as a driving factor, yes. And you know, it was pre-Good Friday. It's not really the same thing. If you look at the development that's happened in Ireland, North and South since 1998, it's a completely different island.
So, simply put, the whole point about regulatory alignment is that in order to ensure peace, then the South couldn't enjoy any demonstrable advantages over the North, and the North couldn't enjoy any demonstrable advantages over the South. You had to sell milk at the same price, essentially. You couldn't create a scenario in which crossing that line would deliver a financial reward of any way, shape or form.
Well, that's the thing about putting the border in. You're going to have, as happened in the Troubles, people selling diesel across the border at different prices, and an illegal diesel trade that still goes on today. With even within the customs union, if the customs union is removed and the regulation is gone, it's nearly unpoliceable.
Is there? I mean, it is. You see, this is where I think this is why the Sun's front page today is about swans with flu, and an awful lot of the rest of the media is just putting its fingers in its ears and closing its eyes. The more supportive of Brexit they were, the more likely they are not to mention the customs union story today, because it's reaching a point where the reality is becoming close to undeniable, but we're not there yet. Reality is still deniable up to a point. Theresa May on the Titanic is still promising everyone aboard that they're going to get exactly the kind of iceberg that they wanted. But is there any analysis from where you are in Cork, both geographically and metaphorically, that could work, that could keep Northern Ireland in the United Kingdom, that could keep the Good Friday Agreement in place and could keep regulatory alignment on both sides of the notional Irish border?
There was a suggestion in the, I believe, 80s by one of our former Taoiseach's prime ministers, Gareth Fitzgerald, whereby the Irish government and the British government would have a complete equal say in the running of Northern Ireland, so it would act as kind of a state within two countries. That would probably be the only realistic.
But then it would be living in a different economic. Well, it would be part of an economy that the rest of the United Kingdom wasn't part of. It would still be part of the single market.
Yes, this is true, but I think that is probably the only workable solution, whereby you appease the DUP and the Unionists in Northern Ireland by allowing them to remain within the United Kingdom, and you allow the North to exist as an economic entity, because being realistic, two economies on a single island the size of Ireland is not workable.
What's it like in the Republic at the moment? Because obviously we're in something of the eye of the storm on this programme with our coverage of it. But there are moments when even I wonder, possibly the Emperor has got clothes on and I just can't see them. It's very, very lonely work, focusing on evidence and facts and looking for reality rather than undeliverable dreams. How does it play out in the Republic? I mean, do you understand why we're doing what we're doing?
No. In one way I do, but you know, from where I'm sitting in Ireland, I am of a generation that's blessed. I have a university education to master's level. I have a job. You know, we have a motorway between Cork and Dublin that cuts travel time to about 2 hours. So, you know, the European Union has been quite beneficial to us. We have massive amounts of foreign direct investment into the country, and you know, we're in a very good position. But
we're going to be able to do loads and loads of trade deals with lots of people that we currently can't do trade deals with.
There are people that you already do trade deals with. The thing about it is, with a trade deal, if you look at say China or the US, the British population, and forgive my estimation on it, it's about, what, 75 million, 68, 75 million?
Yeah, say 70. Yeah.
Oh, 70 million. So if you were China or the US, who would you rather do a trade deal with?
This is like you're holding up this is an echo of stuff that I say. I was hoping that you'd provide me with a...
But I would rather be in Europe.
Well, yes.
Dealing with a bigger
and then the responses I get, and I'm going to read this out because Sam has sent it, and he's even liked it himself, bless his little cotton socks. He writes, "You idiot, I know what the customs union is, so do most folk. It's a club called the EU, and if you belong to this club, you can't do business with anyone outside this club without the whole club membership agreeing. Oh, and the club wants to control many parts of your life over and above business."
What parts of my life have been affected by the EU?
Mate, Hoovers and bananas, mate. Let's not go there again.
I know it's stuff that you've covered before, but when you cover it, I sit there and listen. It's like it doesn't really affect me. It doesn't affect my pocket. I look around. I look at the previous generations in this country that had to emigrate out of Ireland for work elsewhere, and you have mass numbers of people who can stay now. You have jobs and employment, and it's I know you mentioned the sunny uplands, and maybe that's what I'm selling here, but for us at least, it's quite positive in general.
Of course, but not perfect. I mean, this is...
Mr. Farage was here last weekend saying it wasn't, but...
Well, don't be ridiculous. He never interferes in the politics of other countries. He's been quite adamant on the subject. It must have been an imposter. I'm sure there's a thriving market for lookalikes, because that level of hypocrisy would be embarrassing. Billy, thank you. 10:29 is the time. Give me something better. I don't want to be rude to Sam, but I'm going to be. That was one of the thickest tweets I've ever read. Cardiff Dan writes, James, Ireland will have to accept whatever deal the EU strikes with the UK. Hey, don't have a say. If the EU 27 are to be functional, don't they have to act as a EU 1? Dan, maybe when you typed that it made sense. Maybe it even addressed some of the questions that I'm asking, but by the time it reached me, mate, it did neither. So here we go again. Is there any analysis of a Britain, a United Kingdom that is not in a customs union but maintains regulatory alignment with the Republic of Ireland and therefore can keep Northern Ireland in the kingdom? I genuinely don't think there is. I'm not even going to ask why that isn't bothering people more than it should, because I don't think people realise. And the reason they don't realise is because the best-selling newspaper in the country today has a story about the Queen's swans being killed by bird flu. If you feel the need to have some sort of manual for understanding all of this, I can't recommend anybody higher than Tony Connolly, who is the Europe editor for RTE, Ireland's public broadcaster. You can find him on Twitter, and a journalist who works for a radio station in Ireland called Richard Chambers, you can also find on Twitter. I've found them both to be incredibly helpful. Connolly in particular in understanding the detail, Chambers for keeping up to speed with the developments. And my understanding, for what it's worth, look, I'm just one bloke trying to make a bit of sense of something I find very muddling. My understanding is that the announcement from Downing Street today that we won't be in the customs union, or indeed in a customs union, means that Northern Ireland won't be in the United Kingdom anymore. And that should be really scary. And if I'm wrong, it will be really good to find out how and why. But where I'm sitting now, if both sides of that border have to, under the terms of the Good Friday Agreement, be economically identical, I know how sometimes these phrases like regulatory alignment do more harm than good. What the hell does that mean? But it just means, in the same way that you can't, that Birmingham and Manchester and London don't have different tax rates or different levies or different there's a bit of wiggle room on VAT, I presume, for the rest of the European Union, but I presume the Good Friday Agreement means that Ireland and Northern Ireland have to have the same levels of VAT. See, no one claims to know everything. There's a gap in my knowledge. How, though, you could have that rule in place without having a union in all but name is beyond me. Just beyond me. But lots of things are beyond me. Doesn't mean I'm right. 0345 6060 973. 10:37 is the time. I've only got one female voice on my board at the moment. We'll get to you later, Joan. And someone pointed it out last week. I don't know why. Because, well, at risk of sounding a sort of low-level sexist, quite often I think that maybe women are a little bit better at seeing through the wood for the trees than men are, a little less entrenched, a little bit more open to conversation and negotiation. So I'd love to know what you think about this. 0345 6060 973. Do you know, my next two calls are from Dublin and Spain. I wonder if post-Brexit I'll be allowed to take them. Paul is in Dublin. We'll go to you first. What would you like to say, Paul?
Good morning, James.
Hello, mate.
Yeah, no, just listen to your... it's important... many of your callers are very emotive, either the Remainers or Leavers,
yes.
But it's important to get the facts straight, right?
No,
On the 29th of March 2019, at 2300 hours GMT, the United Kingdom is leaving the European Union.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And Northern Ireland is part of the United Kingdom, right? So, a de facto part, many would disagree with, but that is the reality of the situation.
Yes.
So, from then on, the United Kingdom will be a third country to the European Union. So, Northern Ireland will be a third. The border between the Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland will be the only land border between the United Kingdom and the European Union. There will have to be border controls coming into the Republic from the north.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no question, because the United Kingdom also proposes to leave the customs union, the single market and the ECJ. There will be a slight maybe 18 or 24-month implementation period. That's possible, or it could be a straight crash out. But that only pushes back the day of reckoning. So the point is, there can be no question that there will be a border. Now, the United Kingdom on the Northern Irish side could avoid a border if they went to 0% tariffs on the WTO. But that would be economic madness, right? Okay?
Oh, well, we can't rule that out. Economic madness is our new jam at the moment in Britain, mate.
Yeah, but remember, if WTO rules mean you can go to 0% tariffs, but it has to be for everybody. You know, so it would mean 0% tariffs on Irish beef would also mean 0% tariffs on Argentinian beef.
Yes.
And that's the end of the UK beef industry, okay?
Well, I think this is... I'm speaking from memory now, so if I make a mistake, please feel free to correct anybody. I mean, but this is the modelling that Jacob Rees-Mogg uses, isn't it? The Patrick Minford model of getting rid of all tariffs. And Patrick Minford himself has said that if it did happen and we did get the cheaper food, it would end British farming.
Oh, well, the UK farming,
because we could buy the cheapest, dodgiest rubbish from anywhere in the world, and if you would kill off anything that is remotely regulated and
under
healthy.
WTO, you can go to 0% tariffs, but it has to be for everybody.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So the UK, UK agriculture, I think, is like 0.5% of the UK economy. It's virtually irrelevant anyway.
So,
you know, services are something like 80%, and manufacturing is 19%, and agriculture is less than 1%.
Are you sure? I'll take your word for it. I haven't checked that. I'd have thought it was bigger than that.
I think the employment levels may be higher, but actually productivity...
In terms of the actual money going through the tills.
Yeah. The UK isn't in a position to feed itself anyway, so it's massive. So it might as well just go and import as cheap food from all over the world.
On April Fool's Day, ironically enough, on April Fool's Day 2019, what do you think the border will look like?
I don't think it'll be a huge difference short term. Because there will be some sort of 18-month implementation period until the end of 2020.
No, you're right. And then we'll still be in the customs union for the transition period or the implementation.
Yeah,
okay, so at the end of that, you're going to have people checking every milk tanker, every
I
lorry.
would imagine it'll be more spot checks, and they'll use some technology and there'll be spot checks, but it will be... because you couldn't actually... There's so much volume going back and forward. The delays will be massive. It'll be a spot check technology, all that kind of stuff, you know. But and then high fines for people who get them. But one of the big problems is like you go back to like the chlorinated chicken and all those kind of stuff. You know, that's going to be a huge problem, because once the United Kingdom starts to do trade deals with the United States and China and whatever, and starts to import these products into the United Kingdom.
I know when you say a trade deal, you mean a trade agreement. We already do. I mean, America is our biggest single trading partner. Yeah. If you split the EU up into countries and don't treat it as a single market, America is our biggest. And Liam Fox said last week it was nonsense, even though he was contradicting something he himself had previously alluded to. The idea that we couldn't do trade with China while we were members of the EU was completely disproved by Theresa May's visit to China last week. I say this stuff out loud, Paul, and I still can't believe it.
Yeah, the UK does huge. This is the world's fifth largest economy. Like, it's 2.7 trillion.
Yeah, but we can't trade freely globally, is what people are now being spoon-fed. We can't do. We're near.
It doesn't seem to have affected. Like, the city of London is the world's largest, most important financial centre.
No.
It does massive amounts of trade with the whole world. You know, after this. If you're a company in London, a financial company, right, and you have an office in Madrid or Rome, and you want to send a UK national to Madrid or Rome for 6 months or 12 months or an 18-month placement, he just gets on a flight and he goes over to Rome and gets himself an apartment for a year or two. But after this, he's going to have to be getting himself a work permit and all kinds of mess. Visas, work permits, and of course, Italian trade unions are going to say, who are these people coming in from London taking our jobs? You know, it's going to be between the UK and
thanks for cheering me up, Paul.
No worries.
Thanks for putting such a positive gloss on it. Don't get mad. Get even. Ring me. Explain to me why this is not the mother of all problems that it appears to any informed perspective to be. 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. It's really straightforward. If you understand the Good Friday Agreement and you know what the customs union is, you can't make sense of what's happened now. I mean, it looked like this was going to happen when that weird fudge was announced to get us through to phase 2 of the negotiations. And I said to you at the time, I can't quite see what that means, but the wording is sufficiently opaque to allow both Varadkar and May to move on. But this is only a postponement of a problem. And now you've got this post-truth alternative fact Jacob Rees-Mogg lobby that, remember, already explaining that the reason why all of the economic modelling is bad is because the civil service can't be trusted. So that means the civil service can't be trusted, the judges can't be trusted, Parliament can't be trusted, the Lords can't be trusted, academics can't be trusted, journalists like me can't be trusted. Nobody can be trusted except the people who are saying, Sunny Uplands, cake and eat it. We can trust them. But even their hero, economically speaking, this Minford fella, has said that, yeah, he believes we could have cheaper food. This is what Rees-Mogg is referring to when he talks about shoes and food being cheaper. But it would mean the end of either British farming or British manufacturing or both. Because if we now have 0 tariffs on stuff that's coming in on a container from countries that have no problem using sweatshops and child labour, with 0 tariffs on that, how the hell is anybody producing anything in Britain ever going to be able to compete? Our market will just be swamped with cheap, dangerous, unregulated goods. But anyway, we're not talking about that. We're talking about Ireland. Somebody ring me now and put an analysis in place that doesn't lead to the conclusion that Theresa May is poised to surrender Northern Ireland upon the altar of Brextremism. And I'm just wondering what the alternative scenarios are. If we leave the customs union and understand the Good Friday Agreement, either... Well, yeah. What do you think is going to happen? 0345 6060 973. Because if you put any form of border in place between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, then you're breaching the Good Friday Agreement. I don't know what the penalties are for. I don't know how is the Good Friday Agreement enforced. So you can't do that. So what's she going to sacrifice? Northern Ireland's role within the United Kingdom, in it, anything that remotely resembles its current form, or the Good Friday Agreement, which would mean building a wall through the middle of Ireland, and even if it's an electronic wall or you see what I mean, and that would mean that the people currently trading... We've spoken to people whose houses are on both sides of the border. We've spoken to people that cross the Irish border when they go from their kitchen to their downstairs carsey. How? If you're going to put that border back in place... And yet, one day I'd open up the phone lines and ask you to tell me, instead of sort of wiping spittle off your screens and tweeting furiously, just give me a call and tell me why you don't mind. That's going to be the next thing you're going to have to work out. I don't mind that we're breaking the Good Friday Agreement. I don't mind that Northern Ireland is probably going to be moving at breakneck pace towards reunification. And of course, if they do bring in the border, which the DUP would be quite comfortable with, the DUP currently propping up this government, you have to bring in the slightly uncomfortable reminder that Northern Ireland voted to remain in the European Union, just like Scotland did. So you're going to have to do what? Tell these two territories, these two devolved and sovereign territories, that they have to do what they don't want to do. Taking back control by ordering Northern Ireland and Scotland to operate in ways that they don't want to operate on democratically. Do you see? Maybe that's why people don't talk about it anymore, because every time you do, the emperor just gets more and more naked. I appreciate that's an oxymoron. David is in Ashford. David, what do you think?
Morning, James. Thanks for taking my call.
You're very welcome.
I guess I was just trying to consider this from a slightly different perspective, and I'm not sure that the consequences of leaving the customs union are necessarily what you're suggesting or some of your callers suggest. If you think there's the Good Friday Agreement and the customs union, they both have a set of requirements. Now, if I took you into a mathematical time, you presumably remember Venn diagrams and so on. And you have some things that are subsets of another and some things that are intersections. Well, the Good Friday Agreement has a set of requirements, but it doesn't have the customs union as being a member of it as one of its requirements, as far as I'm aware. So you could still have all the requirements of the Good Friday Agreement, which would not require you to have the customs union.
But Ireland is in the customs union, and the Good Friday Agreement's most central requirement is that all regulatory frameworks are mirrored on the other side of the border.
and you could still do that, and therefore comply with the.
So you'd be in the so you'd be doing everything that you do as a member of the customs union, but you'd be able to say that you're not in the customs union anymore.
No, you wouldn't necessarily be doing everything because.
Well, then you've broken the Good Friday Agreement.
Well, then you're suggesting that the customs union is a subset of the requirement.
No, I don't think this Venn diagram business is helpful. Here's how it works, right? The Good Friday Agreement has a central requirement that there is regulatory alignment on both sides of the border.
Right.
So any terms of trade, any rules and regulations that you have to obey to sell into that market, anything that could be loosely described as an economic policy. I'm not sure about VAT. That seems to me to be quite an interesting anomaly, but I check that off.
VAT has different rates in different countries.
All over the European Union, but the rest of the European Union doesn't have a Good Friday Agreement. So I would suspect that you probably need to have the same rates of VAT on both sides of the Irish border as well. But as I say, I don't know that, and it's a bit of a red herring. So the central premise of the Good Friday Agreement is that the two markets are identical, and one of them is staying in the customs union. So how can the other one not be identical?
Because you can still respect from the UK side the requirements.
It has to be enshrined in law. That's a requirement of the Good Friday Agreement.
So, but you can still respect the requirements.
No. It has to be enshrined in law. It's not a question of optionally respecting things. It has to be the same laws.
But the argument that follows, if you respect the Good Friday Agreement, then the UK is therefore committing to comply with a vast proportion of the requirements
Yes.
of the EU.
There you go.
But not necessarily
Exactly.
all of them. But not necessarily everything that's in the customs union.
Well, what, for example, what?
Well, I'm not an expert on all the detail.
Well, just no, don't do this. Please don't do this, because now I end up saying to you, you need to. No, please, David, if you can't explain with a single example the principle, and to be fair, if you're going to start talking about Venn diagrams, I think I'm allowed to ask you to suggest something where we could break our Good Friday Agreement commitment to regulatory alignment. So
I'm not suggesting we break the Good Friday Agreement.
You are, David.
We have to comply with each and every item in the customs union.
And so what sort of items are you thinking that we won't comply with? And you say, I don't know. So what do you think you're actually saying out loud?
What I'm saying is that the Good Friday Agreement does not require the customs union to be in place.
Right.
It requires...
I'll say it again, right? So you've got a mass of land which is divided in two. There is a law in place that says both sides of that divide have to operate in exactly the same trade scenario. They have to obey exactly the same rules. They have to obey exactly the same regulatory frameworks. They have to obey exactly the same laws regarding taxation and workers' rights and whatever it may be, okay? Mm-hmm. Both sides of that divide have to, by law, be identical. One of them is in the customs union.
Yeah.
The other one has to be identical to the one that's in the customs union.
Okay.
Do you see it now?
But that doesn't mean you have to be in the customs union to adopt the same requirements.
So I now say to you for the fourth time, what are the trading arrangements that you think aren't covered by the customs union that we could somehow opt out of while still respecting the legislative requirements of the Good Friday Agreement?
I have to say that as I haven't read the full detail of the customs union, I can't be drawn on that. But
Okay.
you're more of an expert on the customs union, so you're probably...
It's not a question of being an expert on the customs union. It's a question of understanding what regulatory alignment means. And you're saying, well, maybe we could be aligned. With respect, David, you're saying we could be aligned but not aligned.
No, I'm saying you could be aligned but not be in the customs union.
But you're obeying all the rules of the customs union.
You're respecting them, yes, and you'd adopt them all.
But the Good Friday Agreement says that that has to be enshrined in law.
Okay, and so it can be enshrined in UK law.
And then that's that. So we're enshrining in UK law the requirements of customs union membership while calling it something else.
That's effectively what I think you'll be finding that is coming out of the announcement from Downing Street.
So we're just changing the words because people are so stupid they won't notice that nothing's changed except the words.
You could put it that way. I'm sure they'll find there's one odd rule.
So now we've moved then, David. We've moved, have we, from the claim that you could somehow have regulatory alignment without having to align in a regulatory fashion, and now we're saying that we're going to carry on as we are, but we're going to tell the people. We're going to tell the people that everything's different.
You have the regulatory alignment, but isn't that what everyone was looking for? So I think the question, if you have the Good Friday Agreement and the non-membership of the Customs Union, is that what's actually been announced in Downing Street must be that we're retaining the majority of things under a different name.
Or we're waving goodbye to Northern Ireland. So what you've done with your Venn diagrams, you've concluded that either nothing's going to change, but Downing Street's opinion of the British public is now so low that they think they can tell the British public things have changed by changing the words but not the laws, or Northern Ireland is no longer a de facto part of the United Kingdom. Those, under your own analysis, with your own Venn diagrams, those are your two options.
I think it's the...
those are your two options.
I don't think we'll be saying goodbye to Northern Ireland.
So we're going to change nothing then, but pretend that we've changed loads?
That's more likely the case.
And you voted for that, did you?
I did vote Brexit, but I voted to
change nothing, but to just change the words a bit.
No, it was actually to have the right to declare our own laws, etc.
It was to do what, mate?
Control over borders. It was to have the right to change to control our own laws and.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to embarrass you any further. I'll just refer you to caller after 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 caller who voted to change our own laws, but just like you with your regulatory alignments, couldn't name a single solitary example. I'll just read you a quick text that's come in because I think you will be interested in its content. James, I'm a customs officer, so I need to keep this anonymous. I can categorically say that if we do not have tax harmony between Northern Ireland and ERA, there will be a need for a hard border. A recent example of the implications of no border and a lack of tax harmony can be found with aggregate levy introduced in 2002. This added £1.60 plus VAT to the cost of 1 tonne of aggregate, and the cross-border smuggling got so bad and became so unenforceable, all that could be done was to introduce a relief scheme, essentially exempting aggregates from tax in Northern Ireland. If we fall out of the customs union and do not have tax parity, there will have to be a border or the acceptance of out-of-control smuggling. On the other hand, though, and I accept that contributor is a customs officer, that there isn't exact parity. VAT, as I wondered out loud in the last hour, under EU rules, you have a top ceiling and a low base, but it's up to individual member states where they set their VAT, and the Republic and the North of Ireland are set slightly differently. So, I guess that's the point, isn't it? Is that we would no longer have to abide by the European Union rules on VAT, whereas we currently do. So parity has wiggle room, but what you couldn't do is abolish VAT in the north of Ireland, and while it's still in place in the south of Ireland. I told you it was complicated, but thank you. 0345 6060973. And don't be rude about David. This is beginning to get on my nerves, and very little gets on my nerves. When someone rings in because they have been listening and watching and reading incredibly biased and misleading coverage, and it has led them to false conclusions, and one very gently, and sometimes I haven't been gentle enough, for which I take full responsibility, you very gently reveal to them that their conclusions are very, very wrong, and it's very easy to do. You don't shoot him, all right? You shoot the snake oil salesman that have sold him all this rubbish, and you certainly don't get to criticise him if you haven't got the guts to ring in yourself. Just to be clear on that.